Good morning. Here in part 4 we're going to make our cutting templates out, and we'll see how long that takes us and how far that takes us, and maybe we'll get to cutting out blanks. Otherwise that'll be in the next part. But if you're interested in how I'm forming my cutting templates, why, hang around and we'll get into it here. Our cutting templates are developed very similar to how we built our form blocks. Now, I previously laid out this cutting template, or this, we're going to call it a master template for our cutout blocks, since we're using our 1/8 inch or 3/16 inch hardboard as master templates like we did on our nose rib form blocks. And this was formed off of this. They're basically the same as the form blocks. There's a couple of differences. We need a relief hole in each of the two corners, the two sharp corners, and those will be a 1/4 inch relief hole. And I've seen them done several ways. Guys will go in and drill that hole, and then they'll kind of intersect it at an end with a set of snips. If you're building a cutting template, there's no reason that you can't intersect that corner with your 1/4 inch hole, and then on the edges of your cutting blocks you go right back and trim flush to that. That way when you route these templates out, you can route fully into the corner and get your nice routed cutout on both of those corners. So the first thing you want to do with these is you want to go back and drill your 1/4 inch holes in the corner, and I intersect them right in the corner itself, so they are going to be right there where that corner intersects. That way it radiuses back into that corner to give you your relief hole when you form on the edges. So we'll just go ahead and drill those with a 1/4 inch bit. You can actually go one size probably bigger than a 1/4 inch bit to give you a little more clearance and make it easier to route. Your router ball bearings will be a little bit easier to get in there. But for this, we're just going to do 2 1/4 inch holes. Templates cut out. I'm going to go ahead and drill for our 1/8 inch alignment pin, or our tooling hole there, and then we'll go back and drill our 1/4 inch hole. So let's get that hole drilled. Alright, as we did on our original one, we only drill that partially through, and then we put in our alignment pin, just like that. Now, for the sake of speeding things up a little bit, let's go ahead and drill the top part at the same time, because we've been through this procedure once already. Let's clamp that together. This one drills all the way through. Now, we can go back and drill the 1/4 inch hole all the way through for our bolt, to bolt those together. Drill our 1/4 inch hole, and that will have to be countersunk on the bottom side for to recess our bolt. And there again, I think we'll go ahead and drill this 1/4 inch hole since we've got it set up already. This will be countersunk with a 1/2 inch bit on the back side. Okay, and we'll have to grab another bolt to go in there. This pin fits back in here. And let me grab a bolt to go through here, bolt washer and a wing nut. And then we can go ahead, we'll rough trim this around the template, and then we can go to the router table and route the outer edge. I've gone ahead and cut the first template out. Took my little router bit, since I haven't got the ones that I ordered in yet, and took it in and just sharpened it up a little bit. And it does a whole lot better job than it did on the on the form block, so it'll make it through this project, and then I'll just replace it when I get new ones. But there's our first one cut out. We've got our notches all routed in, and when we go to route our parts, all we've got to do is run it along that edge and it will route them right in there. So I'm going to transfer this over to the other one, and we'll look at it again, and I'll take you along to cut this one out. Tolerances are still awful tight on that. Okay, that goes on there. We marked it here, so we'll go back to the bandsaw, we'll trim this edge, and then we'll be ready to route it. Alright, well, we just bandsaw cut close to the edge so we don't have to remove quite as much of the router. And we'll put it back together one more time. Alright, we've got our two templates done together. Our first template's done, or the first half of it. We'll go ahead and pattern route the other side of that, and that will be our cutting templates. Alright, there's our cutting template, and that's all we need to do. We're ready to make a couple of rib blanks. Let's go back over the table and lay that out. Alright, for this little exercise, we've got a piece of 25 thousandths here, and we'll just lay out a couple of ribs. We really don't even need to use our form blocks for that. We've got a master template that we're going to use anyway to lay out the holes. Now on some aircraft, they're going to specify grain direction on how you lay out your ribs. And, Zenith does not do that on anything that I remember. But grain direction on a sheet is the way it comes out of the mill. And actually it usually corresponds to the mill markings that are on it. So as our markings go here, why our grain direction goes here, or our grain direction runs along parallel with that. On a 4x8 sheet, the 4-foot width is going to be a cross grain. So if we looked at this as a big sheet and it was 4 foot wide here and 8 foot long here, our grain direction would still run this way because that's the way it comes out of the rollers when it's milled. So anyway, it's not anything that I think we need to be concerned about on the Zenith aircraft at all. It's just something to be aware of. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rough cut these out. Then we'll go back and take our template and we'll drill our tooling hole and our 1/4 inch hole in the center, and we'll cut out 2 at once on the blocks. I think that's a realistic expectation. You can cut probably up to 4 layers of aluminum. This is 25 thousandths, which goes in the Zenith ribs. I personally don't really cut more than 2 usually. It just seems to be a little bit easier on the router. They cut a little bit cleaner and you're not trying to fight your way through the extra material. And we're not in that big a hurry, I don't believe. So that's just the way I normally do it. I use a set of Ket brand shears just because that's what I have, and I think they were a used set, but I think they're a relatively good pair of shears. Harbor Freight sells one that some of the guys are using. I'm not a big fan of Harbor Freight stuff, as we know. Anyway, let me go grab my little cordless drill, and we'll punch some holes in here and get these set up to route them out. Okay, we'll just drill us a couple of 1/8 inch tooling holes. And for this application, drilling them by hand like that's going to be perfectly acceptable. Let's go ahead and drill both of them. I am going to just very quickly go over to the bandsaw here and just trim out these corners so we're not trying to remove quite as much material. I just took this over to the little bandsaw, just trimmed off some of the excess, got into here so the router doesn't have to remove quite as much material. And what I will normally do on these is I use Bow Lube as a lubricant. Let me grab my stick of it here. And this is Bow Lube. And I use it in the stick form. I use it to lubricate my bandsaw blades. And on the router wire I'll use it. And all I do is put a little bit on there. It just acts as a lubricant. It does a real good job. It's probably a paraffin-based something, but it's been well known as to be the kind of industry standard. It was developed by Boeing, of course, and they use it as a lubricant. They make it in an aerosol, they make it in a stick, and I think they make a cream or a paste, something like that. I use a stick. I can put it on where I want it and don't have to worry about it. If you're running it on a router table and it starts to heat up there, why, it will melt, but it still does everything it's supposed to do. Anyway, let's go over to the router table. We'll get this routed out and see what it looks like. This is one where eye and ear protection are a necessity. Eye protection is almost always a necessity. And I tend to be a little bit lax about ear protection just because I'm already deaf, which is no excuse. But anyway, when I start doing aluminum wire, I try and always have ear protection as well. Let's see what this will do here. Well, we've got our blanks cut out. We've got 2 blanks there. They cut real nice. You still have to deburr the edges. They take a little bit of smoothing. But if we open it up, we've got our 2 blanks there. You can go along and deburr those any way you see fit. I normally still use a small Vixen file if I'm just breaking the edges on anything. And I normally will put it on the edge of the workbench, but I can move the camera around. And all we want to do is knock that rough edge off and smooth it out. One of the ways that I normally do with all of these, and I do it on the inner contours that you can't really reach, you can take a file and do that. But normally in my little drill press, what I primarily use it for is I set up a Scotch-Brite wheel, and these are well used and abused. It's time to replace this one. But I set it up in the drill press and just spin it, and then I'll just run this along the edge, you know, run it through, and that deburrs it very nicely. It'll burnish that edge slightly, and gives you a nice smooth edge all the way around. Just make sure, if you're using these style wheels, to use a good quality brand that does not contain iron oxide. A lot of the really inexpensive Scotch-Brite wheels or Scotch-Brite style wheels and pads contain or are made with iron oxide, and the idea is that iron oxide will impregnate into your aluminum and it will induce corrosion into it. So you don't want to do that. You want to use a good quality, and I prefer Scotch-Brite brand, although those are not a Scotch-Brite brand. There, I get those at my local welding supply. I'll see if I can't find a link to those online and show you what I'm trying to, or what I use for that. But anyway, there's our 2 blanks. And what I will do is off camera, I will deburr these holes and go ahead and finish deburring the edges so we've got a nice smooth edge. Those are actually pretty good right there on this one. But we'll go ahead and smooth those up a little bit more, and then we'll set it up in our forming blanks. And that's the way they'll set on there when we get ready to form them. We've got relief through our corner holes. That relief may need to be, oh, that's probably plenty fine. That relief could probably be recessed back in a little bit more. And we may make that change. Actually, I will make that change. I'll change my cutting template to make that radius just a little bit deeper on both of them. And that's the advantage of only doing 1 or 2 to start with until you get them tuned the way you want them, is you can make adjustments to your form blocks, and that way you're not wasting aluminum. Well, there, we've tweaked that form block just a little bit to get our radius on down in there. And they may still take a little bit of adjustment, but for demonstration purposes, this will be very, very close. So we'll take these, we'll finish deburring them, and we'll be ready to form them up. We'll probably form one left and one right so we can see how that works. But anyway, hopefully you'll find this video helpful. If you do, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and give me a thumbs up if you like them. If you hit the bell notification, you'll know when I put out a new video. And any comments or suggestions, leave them in the comment section for me below. Thanks for taking the time to watch.